Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Macro Perspective. Today, I have esteemed colleague Seamus Sullivan with me, and we will be talking about. Well, you already clicked the link, so you know what we're talking about. So,
Yeah. We're going to be talking about basically like the rise of a plant-based diet, plant-based proteins, sustainability, kind of talking about the pros and cons there. I think, Marcos and I have been coaching people for a long time. There's always this concept of, well, I want to try a plant-based diet for numerous amount of reasons. We're going to go into that and kind of see if it's a good fit for you. And it's a big health trend, and I think we should talk about it. Marcos, what are some ways plant-based eating or plant-based diets have come into your life, whether it just be personal, um, or even as a coach?
I mean, I would have to say, like, 50% of my diet's actually still plant-based, if I'm being honest, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
everybody has this concept of it then being maybe a higher priority than if you are kind of a little bit more omnivorous, right? But I mean, like, I build a meal, it's basically 2/3 of my plate is actually going to have something that is a whole food that is a plant. So, granted, you might not consider, like, I guess, like, plant. Do people consider like grains as part of the
They
plant-basedness?
do. So like the basics here, I have some notes: veggies, fruits, grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds. I'm like, that's more than half my diet sometimes. Just put a protein on top, for example.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, if I break it down, again, I try to do about 8 ounces of meat 4 times a day, roughly, right?
Mhm.
Like, in a perfect ideal scenario, that's what the day would look like. And I'm trying to think of today. Yeah, that kind of happened. I had like a palm of a New York steak, and I had 3 eggs, and then I had some toast. So, okay, maybe that meal, there's a little plant missing, right? Then lunch was like 2 ounces of chopped up bell pepper, 2 ounces of chopped up carrots, a cup and a half of cooked rice, and then 8 ounces of ground beef. So
Yeah.
again, that meal had a higher majority of the food being plant-based, and dinner will have something similar. It's going to be probably like 6 ounces of a vegetable, probably again 225 grams of cooked rice, and then the protein again. Like, so I mean, okay, like I think as it pertains to like plant-based things, I don't treat it as a protein source. And I think that that's what most people will likely try to consider.
Yeah, let's talk about that for real quick. Like, I think this idea of plant-based started spotting up as a retort to, or a rebuttal to, like, the SAD, the standard American diet, and being able to adjust accordingly. Most folks are trying to eat more plants, maybe even going vegetarian or going vegan. Before we go into figuring out those semantics on protein, maybe talking about vegan and vegetarian diets as it pertains to protein and what people can get. I think if we go down that route, I don't want to, hurt anybody's feelings. So vegan might not be the place I want to touch, because vegan is also beyond diet, right? Vegan also means a lifestyle, beliefs, things you buy, whether you buy certain clothes, whether you buy certain products. So maybe we could talk about a vegetarian diet, a mostly vegetarian diet, no animal sources. I think we talk about it from that sense. What are your thoughts on like a vegetarian diet when it comes to pros of a vegetarian diet, then the cons, which I think protein is one of those cons that we might be weaving in there?
Why do I feel like you're bringing up our meeting from earlier today where we're talking about the difference of longevity based on mTOR and all this like nonsense versus like quality of life as you live? Like, so again, I think it kind of goes back to that exact kind of statement as a whole, right? Like,
Yeah.
we have people in our, we'll call it our niche, right? Like our performance health niche, right? If you
Longevity,
recall,
right? Yeah.
right? Well, again, like our niche is not necessarily the longevity component 100%, because we're going to advocate for maybe a higher protein diet as a result
Yeah.
of DEXA scans, and that may not align with these core values of longevity. So again, vegetarian diets, right, I think are trying to load up in antioxidants, right? Trying
Yep.
to maybe regulate would be the right word, like regulate mTOR a little bit more as a result of
Hmm.
having a lower protein yield. And again, then your BMI is likely going to be a little bit more on the reduced side. So weight may not be more as much of an issue. And I would tend
Yep.
to agree. Maybe if you're eating, again, you try to eat like a gorilla, like nothing but bamboo all day, like you're going to be sick of eating because it's just so hard to get in dense calories of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of fiber in there too. When you go like
it might
vegetarian, bunch of
it
dark
might be
greens and
backed
stuff.
up. You might be backed up, and then if you're microdosing some GLP-1 agonist drugs, then you're really backed up, and you're going to need a stool softener plus some other stuff to help you just go and regulate yourself. But
Yeah.
um, vegetarian, like I think everybody in their life has probably had a stint where you watch like Forks Over Knives or one of those,
Yeah. Yeah.
old, we'll call them, like, they weren't even Netflix documentaries yet, but we're going to call them the equivalent of that. Right. And
Oh yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
I'm going to give this a try. And then you make it through a day. You're like, fuck no, I'm going to go eat a steak. At least that was my thing. And granted, like now I can actually have meals that like use mushrooms and a bunch of other stuff to like
Yeah.
give like the essence of it being like a very like filling and hearty meal. But
Yeah.
yeah, vegetarian as a whole, personally, again, I'm going to say, like, again, all diets agree that there should be a good amount of a variety of foods, right? So I'm gonna say, like, I'm gonna be veggie leaning, veggie
Yeah.
forward,
Yeah.
and but I'm not gonna be vegetarian. But vegetarians, and working with clients that are vegetarian, I think that it does open the door for more opportunity for, protein content to get worked in, where it might be a lacking macronutrient for people that are typically
Yeah.
vegan, right? Or cutting out like dairy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a great point. Lots of positives with a like a vegetarian diet has lots of fiber. Like the positives are the fiber. You're working on dialing down that BMI or your body weight and body fat, and maybe regulating some things with the digestive system you may not have been putting into the digestive system if you've been part of the SAD, the standard American diet. Now, obviously, the vegetarian was a rebuttal to some of these things. Like Forks Over Knives was like, really processed meats, really homogenized products that are so highly palatable, highly all these things that do lead to cholesterol issues or lead to all these things. So,
Wait, question there
but
though. Couldn't you
yeah,
be dealing with cholesterol issues if you were eating just high saturated fats?
you could be. That's what the source as well in
Okay.
those uh, saturated fats. Like lots of folks will go plant based. A lot of plant based products, right? I watch my plant based products. Um, coconut milk. Like tons of people could be doing that, or using different forms of saturated like nuts and seeds. So I think it's there. That's also there. I think one of the I was going to get to this point. One of the things that happens with a plant-based diet is that protein yield, right? The protein, for example, I remember there was a very
You muted yourself somehow.
I apologize. I apologize. Let me swing it back. But I was talking about protein itself and the protein density of certain foods. I remember listening to something once, and they were talking about the protein density of just a piece of meat, egg whites. It could be 4 ounces, could be like up to 20 to 30 grams of protein, which is a great serving. But then to maximize that amount of protein from a plant-based source, such as like a legume or broccoli or something like that, you'd have to create so much of that food to like it's like 4 cups worth of beans for the same amount of protein as it would be for 4 ounces. I don't know the exact numbers, but they were just
Yeah.
making these experiments where then it's like if you're being mindful of BMI, like we talked about, right? Okay, yes, you're being mindful of BMI and you're using a vegetarian diet, but the problem is you just 4x the amount of calories you need just to yield the same amount of protein. I don't see how that's a great trade-off when it comes to maybe managing weight or managing food at the end of the day. And even that amount of food in the stomach is just sounds insane.
Yeah. And so I kind of look at the structure of teeth as potentially another kind of thing I would look at personally. Like, you know,
Get
we
some
have
canines,
these,
man.
got some canines. We got things that are kind of, meant to like obviously mash. And our mastication tools are obviously things that could tear into flesh, I guess. Like obviously we've dealt with some level of evolution, right?
Yeah.
We again, like maybe from this would be a very interesting study, but like if you did actually have like the what is it, the Haza tribe or whatever that tribe is that does like, you know,
Haza,
the
yeah.
hunter gatherer and their hunt, you know, and their what would their preferential fuel source be, right? And we talk about this because they look at like the metabolism effects that we see, right? Like kind of it down regulates even though they're super freaking active. And it makes sense
Yeah.
that like, you know, given maybe some other hormones, cortisol or whatever, that like the body's going to kind of experience and do some things a little bit differently. So like, okay, if you gave people like that are highly active, right? I don't know what their
Yeah.
step total was per
There was
day or estimated
a lot.
30K, what,
Yeah, it
right?
was a lot.
Um, and then
Talk,
you gave,
Stephen Gruyere talks about that in his book a lot. I'm forgetting the name of the book, but I think it's something along the lines of like Burn. I think that was the name of the book.
yeah,
But yeah,
I,
they
th-
walk a lot.
I think it just kind of really boils down to the constraint of modernism, right?
Hmm.
And what is going to be a more likely scenario for people, right? Okay, like to maximize potential growth potential, you would have to eat that many beans, but you would also then need to like upregulate your movement to, we'll call it 200 minutes of movement per day, just to like not have this like weight problem. And
Yeah,
I think that that might be unrealistic given modernity, right? So this
yeah.
is like a modern problem. So again, the
A
chances
problem
are
from a problem from too much success.
yeah, right? Like okay, like and again, like I mean, I might be viewing this in a very myopic view, but like I look at it from everybody's. You have to start with like maybe triaging the goal of people, right? So if the
Hmm.
goal is to
Hmm.
do this and eat this way, and I want to just be at the healthiest version of myself, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's very like ambiguous, right? Oh,
yeah.
what's the word that I always messed up on our board practical shit? Oh God.
I'm blanking, man. I'm blanking.
No, God. It's one of those states, whatever. Um I thought it was a time. Oh, dude, brain fart. Okay. So I think it matters like the scope of whatever it is, you would have to look at that. I want to be the healthiest version of myself.
Yeah,
Well, define what healthy would really look like and be, right? To me, healthiest version of myself is having the ability to put my body and do like go do work, to put
yeah.
in work, to quote my, you know, the great late or he's not the great late the great rapper ASAP Ferg, right? Put in work. uh,
Hey, yo, classic, guys, classic.
it's a classic, modern classic. So I like the ability to be like, hey, I want to go pick up objects that are heavy and I want to see the fruits of my labors, right? Maybe it is a little narcissistic, but I like doing that
Incentive,
because
baby. Incentive, baby.
the, yeah, I go because I'm chasing the change in myself visually, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Granted, I don't feel like there's been much change anymore. I'm like, dude, do I like? I even asked my wife today. I'm like, does it matter what I weigh? She's like, I can't tell a difference of you at 195 to 205,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
It's
And
yeah. We're gonna give
yeah,
Ari some water, but I would say
yeah,
I think that the chase, the incentive, Marcos, right? For the audience listening, I think when you're looking at these things, it's we were just talking about the modernity. Modernity has these problems, and they're the problems of abundance, the problems of having so much success. Technically, this is the best time in the world, just having access to resources, access to better things, especially if you live not in a third world country. But it's the best time. And when you have these problems of modernity, problems of abundance, it's going to come down to, okay, movement and foods you choose, and making sure you make better choices, because there's just so many options. It's kind of like just paralysis by analysis. Like, what do I want for date night tonight? You have 50 things you can do if you want, you know? And that's why I think incentivizing yourself, right, Marcos, with the chase for the pump, the chase for the good looks, it's important. I think it's a great incentive, especially to stay healthy as well. I mean, look, I'll tell you right now, obviously I'm gonna do like a workshop in the new year and kind of talk to people and make a bunch of different things. I don't even want to talk about like, oh, when you're obesity, you have a 5x risk for heart attack or this. It's cool, but I don't like to fearmonger. I like to be like, who are you when you walk into a room? When you look the way you want to look, you got that confidence, you've got that swagger. You know somebody's doing a double take, like, yo, that guy's been pumping up. You got biceps, you know. I think I like to lean into that a little bit more, a little bit of that pleasure rather than pain, right? I think some people have pain, but I think, you just go, hey, look, let's have a good time. Let's chase the incentive.
I mean, what does 5x mean when you don't know what death is?
Right? What does that actually mean? I think it's harder to make sense, like, oh, you have an all-cause morbidity. What does that really mean? Yes, you have some constraints, you have some contradictions in your health, but if you're not necessarily like dying, or you're not at a certain age and your health is something, I mean, some people just take it for granted, they do, and they don't have anything they're chasing.
Mhm.
It becomes difficult. Hold on, I do want to wrap this back though. I want to wrap this back. I know I want to go back to plant-based. But I think that happens with the allure of a vegetarian diet, right, Marcos? Where people start chasing these diets. They go down diet rabbit holes. They go down, oh, I've watched that Netflix documentary, and then they realize, holy shit, my lifestyle is not matching up with my health. I'm either too stressed on this vegetarian diet because I'm not getting it right. The environment doesn't allow it. My social life doesn't allow it. And now I'm dying from stress. I'm not dying from the diet that I'm eating. So it's like you get caught in a cycle a little bit, right? So what are you trading off? What is the trade-off with going vegetarian or a certain diet? As compared to just a lifestyle, if you can manage the big movers, right?
Yeah. It's okay that we took some tangents because I think it's still important to address the biggest obstacle in the room, right? Like, what is it that you're chasing, right? Is the idea of longevity, as I think we did in a previous episode where we're talking about, like, it's not just living to 100, right? And it's not just like this acquisition of data. It's like this ability to, like you just said, it's like, what do I get? What do I stand to gain? Do I feel better as a result of my vegetarian or my plant-based diet? Right. And this is where I feel like no matter which diet that you would choose, it's going to lead to some level of subjective understanding,
Yeah, yeah.
And again, the reason why I might scoff at the idea of vegetarian or a plant-based diet is because I could go smash a ton of Aloha bars, for example, plant-based, very minimal ingredient, whole food kind of thing. I could do that for my protein thing, but it does maybe get rid of the essence of what we're talking about here as plant-based,
Yeah.
right? If you're going to do something, don't half-ass it, whole-ass it, right?
Oh yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah, okay, I've done the plant-based thing and I've done it stupid. So I'll tell you this right now. I've done the plant-based thing where it was supplements because
Mm-hmm.
supplemental foods, meaning like, oh, Seamus is going plant-based. I didn't really know how to cook certain plant-based meals because the recipes
Let me
took
go bust out my Orgain or my Garden of Life 30-gram protein shake.
Orgain, Vega, things like this. I'll be honest with you, I did plant-based very wrong. I'm talking about this too in one of these speeches is people think they go on a type of diet expecting to lose weight. I know we could talk about other topics around, but weight loss is a big one, but expecting to lose weight, but they overdo it on calories, especially on a plant-based diet where the seeds and nuts. I was going ham on seeds and nuts or sunflower butter in my smoothies, for example. And I was like, oh, this is this is a tablespoon, right? And I'm like putting in this much. I'm putting in like a tub's worth of all that and then eating it and just realizing, wow, this is, if you don't do these types of diets I don't know, quote unquote correctly, but in a sustainable manner, you just fall down rabbit holes that you may have been doing in the other way. Like if you weren't eating a healthy diet, but you could do this wrong as well, like I was.
Yeah, so going back to like again, who's going to see a better outcome? Is it going to be the person that ate meals that I kind of described? It's very simple, whole food. Like,
Yeah.
is it more ingredient based versus actual meals? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
me and Bonnie talk about at times. It's like, oh, she's like, you have a fruit bowl today. And I was like, she's like, you're eating ingredients. And I was like, well, I mean, I took the time to wash these off and, cut them and, have an apple, blueberry, and a raspberry in here because, like, I just didn't have it. I didn't cook any rice, And
Yeah.
again, like, I think if more people were into these, ingredients over, you know, um, like diet tribes, not diatribes, but diet tribes, right?
Yeah.
Then you're probably going to have a superior outcome than eating in. I feel like here, like the thing about no matter which one we spit out there, whether it's vegetarian, plant based, or again like keto or all those things, is that like you're gonna be eventually get marketed to. So I think that
Yeah.
as it boils down further, the education of how is this impacting the outcomes that I'm looking for will matter immensely. And I would I'd like to think that the variation of my plant based, right?
Hmm.
60 to 75% of my actual like food is again these single ingredient plants, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that are not going through. I mean, like I'm actually
Tons of
going through
processing.
yeah, I'm going through the process of processing it now. I'm like, hey, like I want to like. I have a bunch of friends that like literally I can think of 3 people off the top of my head that like are that have sourdough starters and make their own sourdoughs, and we're like getting sourdough from them. I'm like, I gotta be the next one. I
I'm the
want to
next one
be
too. Actually, I'm
I want to be
actually
that
my buddy's teaching me. His lady's
So
teaching
I
me and
want to be that
Desiree.
granola ass person that's like, I got my starter on my fucking counter because I
Hmm.
am cooking sourdough so regularly and eating it.
Dude,
And
I know, right?
again, yeah, I have
Same.
to go get. I'm not gonna fucking mill my own flour. Let's be realistic here. But at least then I'm like, I'm going through the process of like culturing it and letting it have that crunch and
letting
that
it do its
texture.
thing. Yeah.
That's like the only. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like the
that's
only
pretty
thing I'm
fun,
missing,
dude.
Seamus, is doing that.
Dude, dude, that's the only thing I'm missing too. Apparently, like my buddy, when we had a little picnic for Friendsgiving, brought just freshly made sourdough that his lady made, and I was like, "So you're teaching us, right? So we're gonna do like a double, triple date amongst all the couples, and they're gonna teach us." I'm like, "Thank God!" Like it's great. No, I think you make a great point there too around like these plant-based sources and processing. I feel that a lot of plant-based foods, even though it's marketed, I think you mentioned that earlier, it's marketed to you, it is healthier, the label says this or whatever, right? But then when you really look at it, you're like looking at the ingredient list and you're looking at the processing and then you're looking at the way that the packaging and you're looking at how
Mhm.
it's traveled. You're like, oh, it's a plant-based patty, for example, or a plant-based meat. Beyond Meat is a big one. I'm just gonna
Plant
run
based.
it by.
Well, even a plant based bar. I mean, dude. Okay.
Yeah, 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 exactly that too.
And here's the thing, and I laugh at this. Did you get this email yesterday or the day before? Class action lawsuit against Cliff Bar because of they're advertising a quote unquote health foods bar. And like it's, the plaintiff or whatever, they're going after the fact that they were like, well, they're advertising an energy bar or a natural based bar, but
Hmm.
because there's added sugars, quote unquote added sugars, which are now part of a nutrition label, that this bar, which again plant based, there's nothing in there that isn't plant based, and even their protein bar is like soy and plant based. There's no way typically,
Hmm.
if
Hmm.
memory serves. Actually, it is. I think it is actually vegan.
Hmm.
Again, like it's getting away from the essence of vegetarian, you know and again, like me working with that particular client, you know um it's she's great. Like she understands that she's focusing on those things, but I mean she literally just went on like a 2 week like kind of trip. It was like vacation mixed with work, right? Where again, like I'm like, man, I would have probably really struggle to like try to have that cuisine be my core focus, because a lot of the things that I would depend on don't travel all that well as a plant-based thing. And she's like, yeah, the one thing I messed up on was not having my plant-based protein, versus like there may have been some more protein options or cured type of things that she's like traveling through Africa,
Yeah,
parts of it.
yeah, yeah,
So it's just, I think that it becomes harder. I think again, it is a modern problem, right? Like
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
think anybody in olden days you would eat whatever's in front of you, guaranteed. You would
Dude,
eat the
we're
thing.
opportunistic eaters, omnivores and opportunistic eaters. Like, if you really think in the last few hundred years, this modernity problems just really come up because now we just have too much of an abundance. And this concept, I was listening to Dr. Mike Israetel talking about this concept of obesity being
Well, it's a
this
choice now. Quote, that was the
it's
one we were talking about, the choice of it, right?
the choice of it, and like this thing around this because we're going to get into the cost too, because I want to talk about that, is that this perceived notion that like, oh, cost of getting healthy, the cost of doing a healthy diet, like people think that obesity is only for in certain socioeconomic factors. It's like, no, it's a very how do I say this? Obesity is like kind of like cancer. Like everybody can get it, you know. Anyone could get these hands, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really matter what diet you do. It's just it's this modernity issue of an abundance of energy and an underdoing of movement, or a combination of multiple habits. That's not one component, but everyone can get these hands. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and again, like I think it might come off like I'm bashing that that vein, but like I just said, like I will say that like the majority of things that you would likely need to eat to be a very well-rounded, healthy individual will include primarily like a vegetarian-based diet
Yeah,
with
yeah.
the addition of lean proteins. Because
And good sources from great areas. Not I
yeah,
think this protein idea gets bashed on due to the fact, and not even about like mTOR and longevity, but like the protein sources from SAD, the Sad American Diet, is that is it's from
but they're not the
like
standard
from
American diet
cow.
protein sources aren't lean.
They're
They're
crazy.
not lean. They
They're
are
from
fat
corn
sources, and you
fed.
know
Yeah,
it.
they're from corn fed you know, farmed different sources. So you got to go for like the good source, almost like a Mediterranean style, like really lean cuts, maybe some fish in there, lean sources, right? Lean sources.
Yeah, define lean.
I like a 93.7 as my base, 93, 97.3, 97.3 even. Or even dude,
97.3.
or even like a venison, or like a elk. Dude, those are so lean. Those are so lean. Like there's nothing in there. I was like, wow.
Find that in your Costco. Find that at your Walmart, though. You don't.
It's so difficult, man. That's the
Yeah.
problem, right? Why is that not there? Why does it have to be a Whole Foods for $15 a brick that only lasts me one meal? Why? Why?
Uh, but again, like if you look, okay, so if we were to break down and factor in, so we'll step outside of like a vegetarian thing, we'll step into like the meat sources, right? And we're talking
Yeah.
lean, right? And we're talking, I don't even know what Impossible Meat looks like in terms of what their macro distribution looks like, right?
It's like 20. I've seen it before. I remember having like a macro patty. It's like 20 grams of protein. But then for that 20 grams, I thought it was like 30 grams to 40 grams of carbs, and then high in fat. And I was like, oh, it's not a protein patty. Like it's a carb patty.
Yeah, yeah. All right, cool. I'm gonna look this up. Here's a plant. Let's do the plant-based meat. Never even looked at this. One patty, 14 grams of fat, 9 grams of carbs, and 19 grams of protein. It's a 4-ounce
Actually,
patty.
4 ounce patty. Okay, got you.
Oh, bro. I mean, 4 ounces of 96.4, 4.5 grams of fat, and 21 grams of protein. And you know the math on that. It's like 140 calories,
There you go. There you go.
right? And I mean, okay, like that's just the one. Those are the frozen ones. But I'm again like the only reason why I'm saying like that. That's kind of where that these items are marketed really well. Okay, here's just like the one that would be the equivalent, right? Than actual that was like the pre-made ones. Here's the one that's like 4-ounce serving. One, okay, from like on a cost per cost basis, I don't even know if this is the same too. So on Impossible plant-based beef, it's $8.99 at my local Smith's for 12 ounces. It's not even a full pound.
Dang.
So okay, so
Dang.
like again on a cost, so this is closer to like $13 a pound, roughly.
Dude, I
So
can
you're
get a brick for like
paying.
$6, 6 or 7 bucks.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so like this is this is where I think a lot of people would look at the cost of like you just said, like that venison loin or something like that at a more niche place and think it's not as it's more expensive. But again, you don't know how full you'll feel from it.
Yeah.
Does it we're still I think we're still learning about how satiety signals in the body actually really work.
Dude,
right?
I'm pretty satiated on that. I'll eat that. I'm good. And dude, you know what's funny about those meats compared to like even a ground beef? I feel
What?
energy afterwards. Like I feel like I feel
Yeah,
like I feel
yeah.
like yo, am I in the wild? Like this is something else. I don't know what it is. I can't explain, but I always feel like a different sense of energy that's like, wow, I feel clean. I feel good.
Yeah. So, um, again, but like you're not eating these things in isolation. You're eating it with your 2/3 of your plate having some sort of like veg and
Vegetarian.
some other things that give you like bulk,
Yeah,
right?
dude, tons of greens, tons of greens. Obviously,
Yeah.
like a whole grain source or like a sweet potato from the ground, right? Rice, tons of
Yeah.
rice. So it really is a lot of plants, actually. Like it's a flexitarian or omnivorous version of food where it's just like, look, I eat a lot
Mm.
of plants. I get a lot of nuts and seeds, or I do a lot of coconut milk, almond milk, butters and stuff like that. That's a lot of plant stuff, and then I add protein to it from like an animal sources. So it's a very much a mix of things. That's why I think going back to the title and kind of going back to what we're relating to, going deep into the vegetarian lifestyle and expecting that to change everything. I think there's some pros for some people, but I think overall it's a cost trade off, and there are some cons from it. I'm not even saying pros and cons now. I'm just saying the trade offs. What are the trade offs that you're willing to get? You can get that if you don't have a religious or ethical
Yeah.
issue. Just from a lifestyle perspective and optimization, you can start optimizing now with a balanced
Yeah.
diet, like we've been talking about.
And I look at this from the lens of like the integrative health practicing sense and language
Yeah.
that I've gone through for a certification was like, even in the cleansing phase, while you're plant focused, there's still one meal that does have that lean protein source getting added to it.
Yep.
Plant forward. Plant forward thinking. And I am very plant forward thinking. I want more of those things. I want color and
Same.
variety. Like I
The
want that plate to
rainbow.
look, I want it to pop and look pretty. And I think again, a great place for people to start for like practical application of actually eating more variety, 800-gram challenge. There you go. The 800-gram challenge, you could look it up. It's somebody that popularized it. You eat 800 grams worth of veggie and fruit per day as your
Yeah.
base, right?
Yeah.
That is almost two
Easy to do with
pounds,
some. That's 2 pounds. Yeah.
almost 2 pounds of vegetable content. You're going to have a different level of fullness, especially if you're eating this in the raw state for most of those things.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, dude, like I'll do the salads and I get some salads and I'll do like big bowls and a really just a really great way of doing this is just stuffing your plate with all that salad. And here's this thing too, when you're eating raw stuff or like raw foods, salad wise, for example, those things go bad like in 3 to 5 days. You gotta you gotta be eating those things constantly, and you don't want it to go to waste. However, with like veggies, not veggies, fruit, I do a lot of fruit frozen. And I don't know if you remember this, but starting like 6 months ago, I was trying to hit like 10 different fruit in a week or like 15 different fruit. And I was doing all these smoothies and different things. And it was really fun, man. It was really fun. And you know what? Dude, for the calorie density compared to the volume density, it was a great ratio because I could have a smoothie like this big, less than 500 calories, for example, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, I am stuffed. I feel satiated. I got my sweet tooth fix as well. I got my protein in there. I got my fats in there. And it's just very good. The performance is going well. So, dude, that's just some practical things, right? Really put a lot of greens on the plate. Put a lot of fruit on a bowl or fruit on a smoothie, and you
Yeah.
let it rip, man.
Shoot. I mean, again, to sum this up, like plant focused, plant forward, 2/3 of the plate having plant. That other
There it
third,
is.
again, lean, high quality things. Like, again, I'm gonna side on more of those things all the time.
Yeah.
And just to wrap this up, dude, because of time's sake, I love when a diet actually just has more whole food, right?
Same.
Single
Same.
one ingredient, those things, and other things you can learn how to cook with that add a ton of aromatic and flavor. Like
Yeah.
learning to do that, I
Herbs.
think that's again, I think if I ever want to really start a foundation, it's going to be one that helps people learn fucking home
How to cook.
economics, bro. Telling you,
Dude, I know.
I'm
I
working
think we
on it.
should make a movement, bro. I think we should start a movement. We should just take this on the road, go to high schools. If we have
Hey,
the
well,
resources and time.
slowly but surely, we're doing it. I
There,
swear.
there.
Slowly,
Glad you came.
one
Well,
student by student.
let's do it,
Um,
man. Well, guys, plant-based type episode, talking about vegetarian diet or being plant forward, and just kind of the pros and cons of going too deep into it, and then just how to integrate into wellness and optimization. The conversation was spanning. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you are plant forward, just kind of comment below like how you're incorporating plants in your diet and a well diet. Just comment that below and how you're doing that for us. All right, anyways, macro perspective out, guys. Peace.